right, welcome back. This is the week you missed. It's more like 3 weeks you missed. We had a few weeks we did not link up. It's been a busy summer, lots going on. I think this might be the only week we link for the month of August, or maybe we'll do one more. We're gonna kind of take it a little
Well, summer
easy,
break.
a little summer break, but we had to meet up this week because this
Okay.
is crazy. Our president's gonna get arrested. I mean, I imagine that's what Todd meant when he said, "Wow, big news this week." So if you didn't know, but I'm sure you know, the former President Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate yesterday got raided by the FBI. So that's crazy. Trump wasn't there, which I'm kind of like, that would have been nuts if he was there. And if there was video footage of
Like
the,
freaking out.
yeah, throwing a tomato at them or something, or like
God.
throwing his cheeseburger at them. But it is wild. I think one of the wild things that I think from it, or that I thought was interesting, is that when this all came out, who's the one who shared it all and released it was him, which I thought was interesting. Of like, why is that? Is there a reason? Is it he can control the narrative a little bit more if he is the one who releases it instead of it like coming out? And then I'm also curious what's going to come of this. Is he actually going to get arrested? Because it sounds like it's moving towards that way. So definitely wild, definitely pretty exciting. I'm anxious to see what happens. What are your initial thoughts?
So a couple things. So one, I think the reason that, and I've just been browsing headlines this morning on it, and there's one from a right wing blog, is was the FBI's raid on Mar-a-Lago the biggest in kind contribution to Trump's 2024 campaign? Basically being like, Trump, like, look, he's obviously still in the news, but not nearly as much as he was, given that he's off Twitter and that you just don't hear from him as much. And
Right.
this has catapulted him back into the spotlight and has energized people that are Trump supporters
Yeah,
in a
for
way that
sure.
I'm not sure anything else really could have. So I think he saw, and look, even people who hate Trump will admit that he is sort of a media genius of sorts. And who knows if he's just sort of like an idiot savant and just sort of stumbles into it. But like, he obviously knows how to manipulate the media. He obviously knows how to get his name in the news. And he very well either saw an opportunity or took it, and or he just was freaking out because that's what he does and it turned out
Yeah.
to have a lot of attention. I'm not really sure, but I do think that I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see how this shakes out because I'm sort of two minds of it. One, if there is actual proof that he committed a somewhat serious crime and it is like an open and shut case and they get evidence of it and he gets charged or convicted or whatever, then I think this was fine because no one should be above the law. If it turns out that this was almost just sort of like some sort of stunt or just a way to fuck with Trump using a federal law enforcement agency, that's really, really, really bad. Like that's
Yeah.
really bad. Because at the end of the day, the FBI is a executive branch agency. The president can't like tell them what to do, but he can obviously heavily influence their activities as well as the
But
attorney general.
supposedly the president, excuse me, supposedly Biden didn't know about this at all until yesterday, but I find that hard to believe.
I find that very hard to believe, unless he was told about it and forgot, which I do not.
Yeah, that's more likely, or more uh,
What?
that's definitely easier to believe. But yeah, he said he didn't know about it, which I don't know why he wouldn't have known about it.
Yeah,
Um,
makes no sense.
yeah, so what do you think? What do you think happens in the next day or the next week? Or do you think
Um,
this is going to be like another month before a more development happens from it?
I mean, allegedly, what people are saying is that this has to do with the fact that Trump kept some like classified documents or some things that were supposed to be turned over to the National Archives that he wasn't supposed to keep. Who knows?
It,
Uh,
supposedly he like flushed a lot of documents down the toilet. Like that was a practice that he did.
yeah. Um, so, I mean, I think that I don't know. I think well, a couple things. One, I think it's hilarious to see left wing Twitter going nuts and being like, "It's finally happening! It's finally happening!" And like, look, the most likely outcome of this, is, at least if I just had to bet, would be basically nothing comes of it. Trump does not end up getting charged, and all these people just end up raging out even more, being like, "Oh, he got away again." Like I feel
Yeah.
like, because it's like, it literally ever since, as soon as when the pussy tape came out and other things during his campaign, it's like, oh well, this is going to take down Trump. This is going to take down Trump. This is finally going to take down Trump, and it never ever ever does. And it's a combination of like Schadenfreude, because I just think these people are freaking crazy. Like, I think Trump supporters are nuts, but I think the people that are so like rabidly anti-Trump, it's also like you've let
Yeah.
your entire personality become defined by someone you say you hate, and like I don't get that. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I think it's definitely concerning. But look, like I said, I think if he gets charged with like a legit crime and he actually did something serious, and it shows that like they tried to resolve it without raiding Mar-a-Lago, and that he just was being a dick, then fine. That's what the FBI and federal law enforcement is for. If it turns out that this was almost sort of like a harassment campaign or just some way to like mess with him, then that's a really, really bad precedent.
Do
And
you,
and
do
if
you think we're ever gonna know or find out? Like,
Yeah,
because
no, I think look, Congress people and even people on the left are saying, I think more honest actors on the left are saying that this is this is this is a really serious thing, and we need to know why this happened. Like, this isn't going to be something where the FBI is just going to be allowed to say like, we're not taking questions on this, we have no comment on this. There will be investigations. They will be grilling FBI Director Chris Wray about this and understanding what happened. They will certainly try to deflect, but the truth of this, or at least more information, will definitely be coming out. How much we get, I don't know.
yeah,
Uh,
part of me is also a little curious. Like, so I think this is all about when you leave the White House, when you're done being president, you're supposed to give up all the documents to them. And supposedly he didn't. He kept some documents and took them to Mar-a-Lago. I wouldn't be surprised if every president has some documents that they didn't give and that they kept. Maybe it was like a special letter from Queen Elizabeth
yeah,
or a formal letter from someone that you made amends with or
yeah.
that makes you like happy and you kept it. So like, does Bill Clinton have some letters? Does George Bush have some letters? Does Obama have letters? I wouldn't be surprised. I'd bet yes. I guess the question then becomes, is the letters that Trump has, are they actually worse, or are they just like, is this a technicality that they're trying to get him on, or is it actually like a legitimate crime that he was committing?
That, and I think that is going to be, if we end up finding more about this, like you said, if it turns out like the documents he took were evidence of like widespread wrongdoing, or documents that show that he was like actively involved with trying to like much more involved with January 6th, then yes, he should be prosecuted. Those are very bad things, and like we need those documents as the American people to get whatever justice we can. If it turns out that it is just some like correspondence with foreign leaders that have no real political significance, but just because they were a presidential document, they fall under this umbrella of something that needs to be turned in, then I think that's more ticky tack bullshit. And I don't think it's going to be, I don't think it's good, because I bet you're right. I bet every single one of our still living presidents has some sort of document that they were supposed to turn in and they didn't.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of in the NFL when you have a play, every single play has a flag that can be thrown. It's a matter of if the ref sees it and if it's like if they think it's worth throwing the flag. And it's kind of like every single person in the country has a law that they're breaking. It's a matter of if anyone saw it or not.
there's some book, I haven't read it, but it says that the average U.S. citizen, I think, commits like 3 federal felonies a day. And
Yeah,
it's just because there's so many laws and there's so many little things that, if they want to get you, they could get you, but obviously they just don't.
yeah,
But I think it's very, very, very interesting. And I think the other thing that was interesting is, Biden, they just passed this, Inflation Reduction Act or whatever, basically like a stripped down, build back better. And people are saying that, that was in the news cycle for barely 2 days. Everyone's trying to take victory laps on it. and now this story comes along and just completely obliterates that. I mean, no one even cares that this, this sort of pinnacle or this very important piece of legislation that Biden had been working towards for literally probably coming on a year now is just completely out of the newspapers and will not be talked about. Now it's going to be Trump 24/7 for the next who knows how many number of
Well,
days.
dude, I didn't even know Biden was still president for a little bit. Like, he just got out of quarantine yesterday. He's been in quarantine for like over a month. I was like, what's been going on for the last month that he's been in quarantine?
No, I know. I think it's strange times, man. I think, but also I think it'll be very interesting to see how this plays out. I'm sure Trump will start. I mean, it'll be interesting because I think here's I think will be a sign. If Trump is out and about and talking about this a lot, probably ticky tacky, sort of some bullshit. If it's something where he's not saying anything and there are no statements coming out, I think more likely to be actually serious. Because it's the sort of thing where there's an actual like large or serious potential crime, he's not going to say stuff about it because it could jeopardize him. Would be sort of
Right.
my hypothesis. So I think in the next week, depending on the way that he behaves, I think that will sort of signal a lot about like what is going on here. But the other aspect of this that I've seen people talk about before this raid was that the biggest gift to Republicans could be if Trump ends up getting disqualified because of some legal action against him. Like if he's not
Yeah,
able to
that'd be
run,
crazy.
well, because the thing is, it's like Trump is obviously incredibly, incredibly toxic. And I do think if he were to run, that Biden legitimately or anyone really could potentially beat him because people hate him so much. So if he's not able to run for any reason, and that opens up the field for Ron DeSantis or more moderate Republican or just anyone else, I don't think Biden stands a chance because I think
Right.
people are pretty displeased with him. I think he's going to actually have to get out and actually campaign. He's not going to be able to just sit, in his basement because COVID's going on. And, he's going to be revealed to be not that great of a candidate because he never was. He was picked as sort of the inoffensive sort of career politician with, the right resume and like just sort of he's just Joe, and he wasn't Trump. That was his biggest selling point. And I
Right.
think this time around, if Trump doesn't run, they lost their biggest selling point. So I don't know.
Yeah, time will tell. We'll see. I feel like we still have quite a bit of time before elections and a lot can happen, which actually reminds me, I know I brought this up. I'm going to bring up the next topic too. It's something that I wanted to discuss with you. I think it was last week. I don't know. Time is tough for me lately. I can't distinguish days from months at all. But basically, whenever this was about a week ago, there was a lot of military activity in Philadelphia. There were these helicopters going above, and I was like, "Oh, what's going on? That looks kind of wild." And then I guess precursor, a little pre-story is I am friends with a guy on Facebook who is pretty knowledgeable about like the military, about he's very knowledgeable about like space aircrafts, boats, mostly aircrafts, but all about how they work, the motors, this, that, operate, who builds them, everything. He mentioned about a month ago that the port in Oakland, I believe it was, and maybe one other in California, was starting to get more ships. And you're starting to see more ships there. And he basically said, you haven't seen this buildup since the Gulf War. And he said, basically, XYZ happened. A month later, we were in the Gulf War, and these boats were in the whatever body of water it would
Yeah.
be, the Gulf. Um, but what's it called? So I saw that about a month ago. I thought that was wild. Then this thing happened in Philly, and I see all these military aircraft. I'm like, that's crazy. What's going on? This is wild. And then basically, they announced in Philadelphia that they were having full scale military drills for the week, and they were prepping for biological, chemical, and nuclear attacks. And basically, it was just a drill, but makes me wonder, like, why do they have drills? Are they prepping for something? It's got to be for a reason. And then it also makes me think, like, is it in relation to what my friend on Facebook was mentioning, how like there's definitely a buildup for war, and something seems to be happening. And then I guess last little thing, and then we'll hear what you have to say. So a lot of people think that Taiwan is building up and that China is going to invade Taiwan at some point. This guy says that a China invasion in Taiwan is likely to only happen 2 times a year because they would do an amphibious invasion, and you can only do amphibious invasion 2 times a year because the sea there is so rough. And one of those times a year is fall, one is spring. And in the fall, it's too soon to happen. We would already be seeing a buildup,
Yeah.
getting ready. So he doesn't think it's that. There are a lot of people who are mentioning that Iran is building up, and there's a lot of tension going on in Iran with God knows what. That also involves Russia, involves the United States, involves Israel, involves a lot of big players. Or it could be for just Russia, Ukraine, or it could be for something that we don't know of yet that's brewing somewhere else that is ready to explode. So I guess I gave you a lot. I didn't even really give you anything too specific, but what do you think of all of that? Are you buying canned food?
I mean, I usually keep a pretty good stock on hand, anyways. But actually, my wife and I were talking about it. I was like, would you think I'm crazy if I ordered like a 30-day like thing of rations? And she's like, no, I'd be fine spending money on that. I'm like, all
Yeah,
right, maybe we do that now.
yeah.
So when you brought up the thing in Philly, it reminded me. Do you remember? I don't think we ever talked about it, but it was like 2 to 3 weeks ago, maybe a month ago. They played this like public service announcement in New York City talking about what to do in case of a nuclear strike, and
I might
it
remember
came
that.
like out of nowhere, and everyone was like, "Why the hell are they playing this now?" Like, because everyone was like, and the funny thing is, it was like the advice is so ridiculous. It's like, don't stand near windows. It's like try to go to your basement, and it's like, oh, it's very similar to like the 1950s. Like, if there's a bomb, duck and cover. It's like, look, if there's a
That's
nuclear
not
bomb
gonna help.
in Manhattan, it is not going to help for you to be in the interior of your apartment building or to be in the basement. Like, you're fucked.
Yeah,
So I don't know. I think I think Taiwan to me is probably the next hotspot. I think Iran, while they obviously, they definitely have military power and are sort of always sort of saber rattling. And again, I'm no military expert, but my read on that is like they're just not as serious of a threat as China in terms of just size, scale, and importance to the global economy. Because the thing with China is like if they go after Taiwan and maybe we start sending weapons to Taiwan, they could really, really mess up our economy pretty badly. And the thing is,
right.
everyone's always like, well, that would also mess up their economy. And it's like, yes, but they're a communist dictatorship. If it means, like, if for China, if it messes up their economy and their people are plunged into poverty or some of them start
They,
starving, they're
they
not
don't
going to care.
care.
They don't care.
Yeah,
They do not care. So I think like that's the thing that I think with a country like China and with a country like North Korea, it's like people try to sort of apply Western standards of governance and the way they treat people like onto them. And I just don't think they understand that like these are countries that do not care about their people. These are countries that frankly, if they lost, well, and China has a population program or population problem, but like they're not going to care if 100,000 of their people, starve because their economy gets a little messed up. Like as long as it is not to a point where it destabilizes the regime and leads to like attempts to overthrow the government, they're not going to care. Um,
yeah.
I think it'll be interesting to see. Pelosi's recent visit to Taiwan was seen as extremely inflammatory. The Chinese did not like it, and I think that I don't know, and that's interesting what you said about that. There's only really sort of 2 times to invade. That does sort of make sense, just like logically. Because realistically, my assumption would be you would have some level of like airstrikes or missile attacks to soften things up, and then you would have an amphibious, landing force following behind it, maybe some paratroopers, something like that.
Similar to what Russia did, and I think there's also concern with Russia of trying to get things fixed or a little situated before the winter because that's when Russia gets strong again because the rivers freeze up they can travel a lot easier in the winter. So
What is
that
that?
was a big.
Have you been following what's been happening in Europe because Russia's basically turned off its natural gas supply, or I think it's reduced it by like 70, 80%. So
I saw that, but what happened because of the result, and that's a worrisome for the winter as well.
so there's a bunch of countries across Europe that are now basically doing extreme measures to conserve energy, because typically the way I guess Europe would handle this is they would buy Russian natural gas, or they would stockpile natural gas over like the summer and warm months in these giant storage tanks to get them through the winter. And because Russia has been reduced their supply so much, they don't have nearly the stockpiles that they normally have. And sort of leading into this winter, they're very concerned. So, like in major European cities, in some areas, like big like monuments and stuff that would normally be lit up are no longer lit up to conserve electricity. Hot water has been turned off in municipal buildings. In Portugal, they just passed a law that says you can't set your thermostat below 85 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer or above 66 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter, basically saying that like you cannot like really heat your house or really cool your house because we need to conserve this energy. So I think that, and I think everyone's been saying a lot about, well, Russia's losing this and all this, but I think, like you said, I think we're about to see what the impact of this war really is, and that to some degree, Putin might be crazy like a fox, and maybe he's been playing this long game and being like, you know what, if these countries want to funnel weapons into Ukraine and fight a proxy war, I'm going to show them just how devastating we can be without even firing a shot. I'm going to show you how much we can mess up your country and possibly kill your people because they don't have heating fuel. Or, food prices are skyrocketing to a point where, you now have a flood of refugees from Africa coming into Europe because of starvation. I think, and he's an evil, evil man, but like this thought that he's like crazy and sort of isn't calculating what he's doing, like I think it's a bad read, and I think it's going to bite us in the ass, and not really us so much because we're going to be much more insulated, but Europe really does depend on a lot of food coming out of Ukraine, depends on a lot of fuel coming out of Russia.
Yeah.
And this idea that you can have a country that you depend on heavily for a lot of natural gas and a lot of food, and then get into basically a conflict with them and just be like, wait, well, why aren't you selling us natural gas anymore? Like, what the hell do you think was going to happen?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
like it's like weapons from these European countries are flowing into Ukraine and killing Russian soldiers. You think that's not going to draw a response?
Right.
Like, I just, it's wild. But yeah, I think the fall is going to be even crazier. And again, I think we are in for interesting times, Jeremy. I
Yeah,
think it's
no,
gonna.
I'm here for it, and I don't know when I will see you again, but I'm sure when I do see you again, there's going to be a lot more wild things to discuss, and we're going to have plenty of topics all fall and winter. There definitely won't be a shortage of that. That's for sure. But
Oh no.
I think that's about all the time I have for the week we missed. I gotta go get some work done so I can afford my groceries because prices just keep on going up. And I will talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Peace.
Later, later.